Gwynedd Mercy University, which would be the bulk of today's webinar. Before we get started, we have certain institutions that we would like to acknowledge from all throughout the U.S., ranging from Anderson University, Gateway Community and Technical College, Lehman College, Augustana College, Sophia University, William James College, Bunker Hill Community College, California State University, Bakersfield, and Beloit College, and many others who have, don't want to waste everybody's time to name, but welcome to everyone who's dialed on. So as you can see, this would be the basic the trajectory for today's briefing. The follow-on after Carl will include the Q&A session, where we'll welcome all questions. During the course of the webinar, you can also post your questions in the web conference pane, and at the tail end or during the course of the webinar, we will try and respond to them as they come in or whenever it makes sense. So the ideal sort of outcome for this briefing is to learn about Carl and Gwynedd Mercy University and what the context was, what they did with the project, and what forced them to actually go down this route, and what was their outcomes were by implementing VDI. Just as a footnote, many of you are existing clients, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with Oculus ID, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but Oculus has over 400 clients in primarily the higher ed and peripherally in the K-12 space. So we are pretty much exclusively focused in the education domain. We service everyone from IVs to private to states, 2-year, 4-year institutions as such. So quite a wide range over there. Specifically, since Oculus ID has worked with so many institutes, and those of you who plan on hosting their VDI environment, we just wanted to roll with the certain marketing options that we have over here. You can actually host your VDI environment with Oculus ID for as low as $19.99 per device. For those of you who who would like to make use, we do have a grant with in collaboration with Campus CAI, where you can get a grant of up to $15,000 to cover for the implementation for the virtual desktop infrastructure. For those of you who already have VDI implemented and you would just like support in general with your day-to-day activities, and if you'd like to set up monitoring or just any sort of assistance to ensure that it's running fine or any upgrades are required, you can always also use the bucket of hours that we have for 20 hours at $2,500. So that is the advertisement portion from today's briefing. We're going to move at this stage to Carl and the briefing from Gwynedd Mercy University. Carl, at this stage, I'm going to kick this over to you. So if you can please take us through our institution and project, that would be great.
That sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our university and how we've been using virtual desktop infrastructure over the past few years, and what our future plans are. Gwynedd Mercy University is almost 3,000 students at this point. Been around since 1948. We have several traditional on-ground programs for our traditional student population, and over the past few years, with the changing nature of higher education, we've moved into accelerated programs, evening adult programs, and most recently online education. So that's been a big change for us, and we've invested a lot of technology resources into that endeavor, and it's been working out well. Not only for our online classes, but also there's been a lot of technology change on ground in the university. too. And virtual desktop infrastructure has been a part of both of those programs. We get a lot of different students from many areas. Of course, we're a regional school, so we have a lot of students from the Philadelphia area. But with our growth into other programs, such as online learning, we're getting students from further away. And not only do we have a need to use our learning management system, but we need to have agile resources because instruction occurs in a lab environment as well. And this is one of the reasons we started looking at virtual desktop infrastructure. Next slide, please. VDI is something that was very new to us. We created traditional computer labs on our main campus and our satellite campuses. We have one main campus about 11 miles outside of the border of Philadelphia, the city. And then we have a number of other satellite campuses, 3 of them. One is in Center City, Philadelphia, and there's 2 others in the suburbs of Philadelphia. So for a total of 4 campuses, we have created traditional computer labs. These are labs with computers that we install software on each computer, and technicians have to be dispatched to update all those computers or change software. So we have not a large IT staff. I came from a very large environment at another university where we were working with tens of thousands of students, but the needs are still similar, just at smaller scale. And managing the labs meant also managing them with less human resources. So our goal, as our instruction changed, was to reduce our traditional computer labs because of the need of them was changing, with their online programs and other programs. But also we wanted to reduce the workload. As we expanded campuses, we kept adding computer labs for each satellite campus, but our IT support structure was limited to the people that we had. We really couldn't hire more people. Additionally, with the online programs, as some of you or many of you may know, having experienced it yourself, moving from traditional to online now means that we had to have 24/7 availability of our systems. And we also had to change them very quickly. So with accelerated classes going to a much shorter duration of time, and classes that were condensed and needed to be changed quickly, we would have to try to dispatch not only staff that was assigned to maintaining computer labs, but also we would have to pull people from other departments to accommodate the need, as far as changing a 32 workstation computer lab overnight was not an easy task, and it required people from other departments that had to chip in and help. Of course, this affected the projects and the other departments, but we really needed to have computer labs configured and ready to go for class the next day. So the good thing about looking at virtual desktop infrastructure was that the agility of it being available in the online environment. We had traditional on-ground computer labs, but how do we get a computer lab into a class that required a computer lab that was completely online with no students getting any face-to-face instruction or no students setting foot on any of our campuses? And so one of these solutions was to create a virtual desktop infrastructure computer lab that could be accessed virtually instead of having to come to school and work to the lab. Also, the availability of that lab meant that it was open 24 hours a day, that we didn't have to have someone monitoring the lab and maintaining it. So we took a hard look at justifying getting into VDI, and then we did it. Next slide, please. So what we did, our first step was to have our enterprise systems group who's in charge of our data center and our telecommunication systems and our network to set up a in-house VDI, we have VMware configuration that we could start working to kind of build a proof of concept so we could get funding for the project. We went ahead and did that with existing equipment, purchased a little bit of software, and we set it up. And it was a big learning curve for our team, and having limited resources means that you can't go so deep sometimes in skill set or knowledge. You really have to have a more horizontal approach and be able to fix a lot of things or know about a lot of things, a wider breadth of knowledge rather than deeper. And so it was a learning curve for our staff to pick up on this, and it took a lot of time and effort, and again, time from other projects. So we noticed this as we rolled out our proof of concept, and we imagined ourselves trying to maintain this. Next slide, please. So our options turned out to be implement an in-house solution, which was somewhat successful. We were able to get it to work. We understood how it worked. We created some tests. We tested in the library, which can be a good or bad thing. It's maybe not so good to test in a high traffic area where students are depending on resources, because if the system goes down, they don't have the resources. But we had built our own very reliable system, and it worked well there. And the good test was getting students to use those systems, so we could see how they used it, if the system could handle what the students and faculty needed. We also deployed this in the online environment as a test, and it worked well there. But there was several limitations to that. So we couldn't imagine handling this with the growth that we anticipated in-house. So as an in-house implementation option, we looked at other solutions. Another solution was a local vendor in our area who knew of virtual desktop infrastructure. They were close by, a few miles away. They did have a few staff that specialized in it, but they were learning along the way too, as far as deploying it in a higher education environment and understanding how our use case would develop over the next year or two from when we started. There were some limitations there as well. And then a third option was using Oculus IT. And we had experience with Oculus IT in terms of other systems that we had moved to the cloud and other projects that we work on them. So they were a known entity and also a consideration. The real test came when we had a new building that was built on our campus, and 2 labs were installed in that building, and they were both designated as virtual desktop infrastructure labs. So our goal was, let's not do this in-house. Let's find a vendor. So another option was using our hardware vendor, computer hardware vendor, to help us roll this out. They told us they had experience in this area, and who better to create 2 brand new labs in a brand new building than our hardware vendor that we buy equipment from all the time. So we tried this route, and it took them much longer than anticipated, because I believe that the expertise was acquired externally, and they had a learning curve as well. So it took some time for them to get that together. The implementation was much longer, and there was some issues along the way that required support, but the support structure wasn't quite there, since this was kind of an offshoot of their main offerings to their customers. So that didn't work out too well, and we knew this in a very short amount of time after those labs were implemented, and we decided not to renew our contract for that, and we went to Oculus IT as our second option, which should have been our first option in retrospect. So they were able to come in and deploy the entire system in a fraction of the time, which I will talk to you about in another slide, where really kind of lays out how the whole project was deployed and the timeline. So in looking at what Oculus IT had to offer, there was really no, when we did it, we were facing in-house, we were facing a big investment, not just for the endpoints that would be used in deploying the endpoints to, say, our computer labs, but also in terms of our data center infrastructure, which had to be set up, and the in-house expertise required to maintain that in-house system. Going to the cloud was much more effective. I really didn't have to have those resources sitting in a data center. I could point those resources out to my community, face-to-face support, which is really needed here between our faculty, staff, and students. So much better use of my staff. We really didn't have to have any upfront investment by moving this to the cloud. We had an agreement, and this was the annual fee. In addition to that, my staff is here mostly during the day, from 8 to 6 p.m. They're really not here in the evenings or on the weekends to provide immediate support if we had a VDI infrastructure issue. They couldn't attend to the servers or be here to deal with issues. So another good reason to have this move to the cloud, where it could be maintained by Oculus IT, and that there was always somebody ready to answer the phone or deal with an issue as far as the VDI services. So that 24/7 access, that's part of the package that we're buying. There is no extra fees for that. That's the service that we buy. So we have much less in-house expertise required. And also, when we want to stand up a new instance of VDI, say a new lab, again, we don't have to marshal on-ground resources here as much and add to our systems. We simply make that phone call, and within a short amount of time, we can have a new instance. Next slide, please. When we did deploy our labs, we made decisions about where, what kind of endpoints we were going to be using. And so the resources are sized appropriately depending on the need. So we had knowledge workers and power users, some of who were going to use this, but this went for the labs too. Some labs had to be more robust than others. Some labs just needed a web browser or check your email or Microsoft Office. Other labs needed more complex and sophisticated software that was much more resource intensive. And so we had a different user instance for that. Our nursing program, for instance, uses a lot of proprietary software, and especially software used for diagnostics or to interact with our simulated mannequins that are used for diagnosing medical conditions. We needed more sophisticated and more robust software for that, so our endpoints had to be more robust. And you can see there's a couple of different designs there. Designed for the knowledge worker who just needs the basics. You see the resources and this type of system that was set up, and then the power user instance that was configured for the more robust endpoints. Next slide, please. And this chart that you'll see kind of shows the in-house complexity of what would be required for us. We had versions of this, but this is our end goal, is what we were looking for in terms of providing VDI infrastructure for the university. Make a big investment, capital investment in equipment, and also resources to manage this, because it took maintenance and support resources, of which we really did not have. And once we set up an instance of this on campus, as we did in our test model, it was significant amount of time to just maintain that, let alone grow that to a bigger model. Then we would have to try to hire more resources, which was pretty much not able to happen for us. So you can see the complexity that is required. We try to keep our data center simple. We try to standardize on software to keep support manageable. But in purchasing load balancers, switches, the SAN storage, that just was very pricey for us. We just really could not afford to keep expanding our existing SAN. We had to go to a different model to accommodate the growth that was anticipated with VDI. We also needed to tie that into our Active Directory. So if you're looking at this hosted VDI diagram here, you can imagine that we would have to manage this system on campus ourselves, but it's also kind of localized as a point of failure possible. So, if we're using VDI for our online classes and we have a regional or even a local or even a one campus outage where the data center is power outage, which we've had, and we do have backup systems like generators, but they only have so much time when they can run. You can imagine that the entire online community would not have access to any of these labs either during that downtime. So we needed a much more robust system. Next slide, please. So in moving to the cloud, which we did, you can see it's a bit more of an elegant solution and much simpler for us to deal with as far as the access for our users. Online students are using their telephones, their mobile phones to work with our learning management system, but they've also used their phones and other mobile devices to complete coursework, and this means completing assignments in virtual desktop labs, kind of using the instance through this remote access. Laptops, of course, are very popular with students. And then we also have our local labs where those same instances can be accessed. So the great thing about going with the cloud was the ability to integrate with our Active Directory. So authentication was really not an issue. And also assignments and work is stored in the cloud. So if we needed to retrieve a lost assignment, we do have a backup service with Oculus IT that we maintain, so we could easily retrieve files or information that was backed up, but in the cloud. Again, eliminating a single place here on campus where we would have this stored. Next slide, please. So the advantages of going with the cloud and using it in multiple scenarios was that the end user had a lot of options as far as what they could do. We weren't bound by our physical labs on campus any longer. There is a predictable cost. I mean, certainly when I was pricing the equipment and looking to move ahead with expanding our on-ground, on-campus infrastructure, the costs were really astronomical for our type of school and our type of budget. It's much nicer to know that I've got a predictable cost. So if I want to upsize our instances of VDI, if I want to add another lab, I know exactly what it's going to cost. There's no surprises there, as opposed to when I needed more SAN storage to expand. Not only did I have to spend more money on the SAN storage, but sometimes our SAN storage infrastructure was not robust enough. We had to go to the next version. Now you're talking a lot more money. So it was kind of a no-brainer to go to this predictable cost model. And there is a lot of flexibility where we can have computers on the ground, or we can work through the cloud to access the same type of content. The virtual desktops are very straightforward for our end users. They're very familiar environments. We can very easily update these systems with new software. If we had on-ground tech staff going to each campus and each computer and installing a new program, it just takes forever. It really takes a long time. and it puts a lot of stress on the IT staff as well as delaying possibly teaching and learning, which is something we definitely don't want to do. So by using VDI, it's much we increase the agility of being able to respond to changes from faculty and programs that are new, that are created new and need to stand up very quickly. And we can make a change, a software change, without leaving campus. This can be done from IT staff's home, too. We could do it from home and make changes to our VDI infrastructure. Providing an update, adding software, changing an entire lab in much less time than it would take for us to deploy someone to these labs. And the other added benefit is, while we're talking about creating this in-house infrastructure, there's a whole security aspect of it to make sure that the systems and the access to the systems are safe and secure. This is another issue that we really don't have to deal with since it's hosted in the cloud, and Oculus IT takes care of these things. Next slide, please. I spoke earlier about how long it took us to stand these computer labs up in our environment, and our previous vendor that we worked with took months. It really took much longer than they said it would take, and there was a big learning curve for them as well. So I would say it easily took 4 months to set these labs up. These were just initially 2 labs on our campus in our new building. When we left that company and went to Oculus IT, it literally took weeks instead of months to implement the project. Very fast set up, and I have to say the performance was much better too. The system performance, it's cloud hosted, so our performance was lacking in our previous instance, and by using Oculus IT, we noticed, and our users noticed, a difference in the speed of each using the endpoints or accessing VDI. Looking at the project duration, we started out with a kickoff meeting and scoped the whole project. So we had kind of been through this once before, so we had a little bit of an advantage and knew what we wanted to avoid doing as well as what we wanted to do that might have been different originally. So that meeting went well, and everything that we had wanted was accommodated in there. There really was no issues. Even technical issues that we were addressing before were resolved in this new implementation. So there really wasn't much of any limitations. We kind of mapped out the entire plan and went to work building it. And then the actual implementation, which took less than a week, went very smoothly. Then we had students and faculty come in and do some testing, make sure that it worked throughout the process. And eventually we rolled this out in a shorter amount of time than anticipated. We also received on this implementation that we didn't receive on the other one, documentation. So there's a lot of record keeping that really came in handy for people that do support it, technology support specialists that go in there that don't really know anything about VDI or the system. They can easily look at some of the documentation and fix a lot of the problems, so we don't really have to escalate. So that worked out well. Next slide, please. So, in looking at the amount of time that it took to roll out, we had estimated about almost 150 hours and was completed in 117. And so much faster implementation and accurate, and really what we were looking for. I think there was some tweaks along the way and lessons learned as far as how to roll the project out. It was a great project to work with Oculus IT because we learned more than what we did with our backup project with them or our domain controller project with them. This was a much more intense project that affected a lot of different people. Next slide, please. The lessons learned is a lot of communication. I have to say that in working on that project, you saw the slide before, 2 slides before, that showed the amount of work that we had done together. That communication is very key to the success of the project. So when working with Oculus IT, it's important to dedicate somebody on your side in your institution that is not necessarily going to be the technical expert on this, but definitely the project manager. If you looked at that one slide that showed the timeline at the bottom was project management. That was really key to making this work because it is somewhat of a complex deployment. But you know, with the communication and monitoring what you want to do, and then making sure that users are involved along the way, so you find mistakes and issues before they become mistakes and bigger mistakes and issues. That was really key. I have to say, you really need to attend. It's not a set it and forget it solution for sure. I mean, there is a level of involvement you have to have as an institution, but it's certainly not the time that would be devoted by technical staff, and it's certainly not the financial investment that you would have to have. It's really just tending to the project as you would any project. And testing is key. And I think the thing that made it more comfortable was that we had other projects with Oculus IT, so we were pretty confident going in that this would be successful. Not to say that there weren't bumps along the road. There certainly were. Not to say that there's issues now and then. There are with everybody. But the good thing is that Oculus IT was responsive to these issues. As you can see, well, as I said, they're much faster response time than the other people we work with. And when we have to stand up a new lab or we have issues, immediate response. I'm not having to put a ticket in and wait for somebody to get back to me. Their response time is terrific. Next slide, please. We're looking at other features with VDI and other ways to use this, thinking about also moving to desktop infrastructure for our users, and as far as our administrative staff and personal computers. You know, we were thinking that, you know, could we get the entire university on a virtual desktop infrastructure and just manage that remotely, which decreases the amount of staff that we would need also to deploy to individual offices. We sent a lot of updates out. When we update, say, Microsoft Office, that's a huge project and it takes a long time. We think that the time to deploy that would be much less with the virtual desktop infrastructure environment. So those are talks we're having now. So far, the lab implementation we've had are reliable, and our dream has come true as far as being able to save resources here on the ground and allow Oculus IT to handle a lot of those issues. So I have to say this was a successful project, and we're going into multiple years now of using this on our campus, and it's been very successful. We continue to explore new projects and uses of this in our near future too. And that's pretty much the story of Gwynedd Mercy University.
Carl, thank you so much for that. We indeed have been working for a really long time, and all those kind words, you know, it's always great to hear. So thank you so much for that. We have a couple of questions over here, but we'll just go over one or two more slides, and then we'll come to those questions. So to all the people who have dialed in, please you know, keep the questions coming in, and we'll take them shortly. I just want to take a couple of minutes over here and talk about the hosted services which are offered by Oculus ID. The Oculus ID is we have our own data center with the Blue Bridge, which is actually a three-tier Cleveland. Apart from that, Oculus ID, we're also partners with Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Veeam for any cloud hosting services. Just some quick facts about the Blue Bridge Data Center over here. We are actually located, as we said earlier, we're located in Cleveland, and we've got close to about 18,000 servers over there, and the size is about 37,000 square feet. So we're close to about 100 plus institutions who are currently using our hosted services. for hosting various applications, such as Oracle or Microsoft Forefront, or hosting their DNS services, or Genzyme are majorly hosting their ERPs or anything for that matter. So we have a lot of references in the higher ed K-12 space for hosting. A couple of them are listed below. Gwynedd Mercy, as you can see, is definitely on the top, along with Our Lady of the Lake College, William James College, Piedmont College, etc. Moving on, we can see, just as you can see, a quick snapshot of the Oculus ID services. This is basically it's divided into 4 parts. We have the cloud consulting portion, which deals with the readiness assessment, cloud backups, Power DNS, cloud DNS, migration, etc. And along with our hosting services, where we have VMware implementations, physical to virtual migrations, 24/7 management and support of your services, ERP hosting, LDAP 80 for if you don't have those, you can host your secondary AD and LDAP with us. So those are certain services that we offer in our hosting platform. A major emphasis that a lot of institutions put with us is our 24/7 NOC environment, which offers 24/7 monitoring of your servers. And monitoring is basically done through our tool over here using Xenos, and we have a dedicated team who's always there. And anytime any server or any application goes down, they receive an alert, and based upon the hierarchy shared by you, we contact the people via SMS, email, or call, and ensure that any P1 can be sorted within a stipulated time frame, and SLAs are met. As it says over there, it's called performance reporting, on-site device monitoring, operations management. So all sorts of reports and monitoring information can be shared, and you can have details. You can be sure that your services and applications are always up and running. Disaster recovery is a major thing that we have going on currently with, especially with the Amazon Web Services, where you can have, where you can actually back up your data, for as low as 1 cent per gigabyte. So definitely reach out to us if you would like to get disaster recovery in place. So that's a little bit of just about what Oculus ID does in the hosting and the cloud services domain. Moving on, I would like to take the questions which have been posted over here. So the first question that we have is Carl, and this is for you. It asks which software platform is VDI currently using, and this has been asked by Barbara.
As far as the programs that we're supporting with VDI, like the applications for our nursing department, or we're running pretty much Microsoft Office on everything. Running all the web browsers. Is that the kind of question we're looking for, or something else?
Perfect, Barbara. I hope that answers your question. The next question that we have is from Todd, and he would like to ask you, what changes did you have to do for your ISP speed and feed in order to support the bandwidth of that many desktops in the cloud for your campus user access?
Yeah, currently between our buildings, we have gig and the desktops for the endpoint deployments. We make sure all those are over 100 megs. So they're gig delivered to the desktop at that point. But that's local. And outside, we have people connecting when they're using private instances of VMware through our internet service provider, which is basically we luckily have fiber down to the regional area where the internet comes into this region. So that's very easy for us to, it's very easy for people to access our systems through that fiber. We have given them connection software so they can connect, but all speeds, yes, we have addressed our network speeds both internally and externally and optimize them. So, we did invest money in that, but we had to do that anyway because we have a lot of remote desktop access for people from home. So they will use a different software, and some we have Citrix users who have to connect in, like administrative users for administrative offices, and they will use access through the internet to get to our systems. And the performance on those are all measured. We measure the performance, and it's fine. We have about 600 megs of bandwidth as far as access for internet. So that we haven't even peaked yet in using that. So that's a constant assessment, and that's a constant job for our enterprise systems group to kind of manage the, monitor and manage to make sure that we have enough bandwidth. Now, interesting you bring that up because we did have a problem with our Center City campus, and the reason is because we used a separate service out there, network service. We had Comcast at one building, Verizon services at another, and we had not initially purchased enough bandwidth at those remote sites. So those had to be increased with those vendors, and then everything was fine. So there were performance issues at the local satellite campuses, but they're gone now because all we had to do was up our bandwidth requirements for those buildings.
Thank you so much for that, Carl. I hope that answers your question. The next question we have is from Rebecca, and she would like to know if you're running any other OS apart from Windows on your VDI platform.
Well, we do have a growing request for Mac. As far as instead of Windows, we use right now. That's our standard. We try to standardize on Microsoft, but we do have a growing Mac environment, and we are considering a small lab on that next. I hope that's the answer to the question as far as the type of OS we're running in our environment, our VMware environment for our end users.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Carl. And the last question that we have, that's from Pamela, and she would like to know what software version are you running for VDI?
Well, currently we have different labs that were stood up at different times, and we are currently using version 5.5 for VMware. I hope that helps. We have the hypervisor, VMware vSphere. Does that hopefully answer your question?
Yep, that most certainly does. So thank you so much for that, Carl. That for all the answers to those questions. I would just like to quickly skim over the promos that we have currently running. So you can to everyone who's dialed in, please make sure you reach out to us to make most of this, and you start hosting your VDI environment for as low as $19.99 per device. And definitely make use and apply and make use of this grant, to cover up your implementation costs. And along with that, make use, if you're already running VDI, make sure you use the bucket of hours over here for as low as $2,500. So thank you, everyone, who's dialed in. As next step, we'll be sharing with you the PPT for this webinar, and it's called. You'll always like to share your details with the people who have requested, and if they'd like to connect, if you can just help them out. To all those people who have dialed in, expect an email out from whoever reached out to you, and please make sure you book us for the one-on-one session to take this forward. Thank you to everyone. Have a pleasant rest of the day, and we hope to speak to you soon. Carl, thank you once again for being such a wonderful presenter and sharing such amazing details. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Oculus ID signing off. Have a good day.